The night was silent on the frozen planet. Snow covered the land like a white ocean. Endless and cold, the wind howled, carrying with it the sound of loneliness. A human explorer named Daniel walked through the storm. His ship had crashed far from home, and he searched for shelter. His steps sank into the deep snow. His body tired, his breath heavy. Every shadow in the storm looked like danger. But still, he moved forward. Because if he stopped, he knew he would freeze. Through the thick snow, he saw a faint light. A small tent stood alone, shaking under the strong wind. It looked weak, as if the next storm could crush it completely. Daniel hesitated, his heart racing. Was it safe? Or was it a trap? But his body was weak, and he had no choice. He pushed forward until he stood before the tent. He pulled the frozen cloth aside, and what he saw inside made him stop breathing for a moment. A young alien woman sat on the snow-covered ground. Her skin was pale blue, glowing softly in the dim light. Her long hair fell around her shoulders, and her eyes were full of sorrow. She was beautiful, almost unreal. But beauty could not hide the pain on her face. Two small children sat beside her, their tiny arms wrapped around each other. They shivered, their lips blue, their clothes torn. The woman held them close, but her own body shook from the cold. Snow clung to their hair, to their skin. It was clear they had been suffering for a long time. The human stood frozen, unsure what to say. But the alien woman raised her head slowly. Her voice was weak, but her words cut deep into his heart. "Human," she whispered, "please. Adopt my children before the storm takes us all." Daniel's heart stopped. He had expected fear, maybe even violence, but not this, not a plea. Not such heartbreaking words. He looked again at the children. They stared back at him with wide, glowing eyes. Eyes that carried both fear and hope. One child pressed his face against his mother's shoulder. The other reached a tiny hand toward Daniel. As if begging silently for help, the storm outside roared louder. The tent shook as snow pressed against its sides. The woman's voice trembled, but her gaze was strong. "I have no one left," she said. "My husband is gone. My people have left me, but you. You are human, and humans have strong hearts. Please do not let my children die alone." Daniel's mind spun. He was only one man, lost, stranded, barely surviving himself. How could he protect alien children? How could he carry such a heavy promise? But the sight before him tore at his heart. The children were too weak to even cry. They clung to their mother, their small bodies shaking from the cold. If he turned away now, they would not last another night. Still, fear whispered in his ear. What if this was a trick? What if the aliens outside wanted to trap him? What if he was not strong enough? His hand trembled. He wanted to step back, but his feet refused to move. The children's eyes followed him, and in that moment, he felt something awaken deep inside. The woman lowered her head. Her tears fell and froze before they touched the ground. "Human," she said softly, "you are my last hope. Take them, raise them, give them a life I cannot. It is my only wish before the storm takes me too." Daniel's chest tightened. The weight of her words pressed against his heart like iron. He had faced many dangers in his travels, but never something like this. This was not a battle of weapons. It was a battle of choice between fear and compassion. The storm screamed outside. The light inside the tent flickered. And Daniel knew time was running out. His breath came heavy as he finally stepped closer. The children flinched at first, but then one reached again for his hand. Their tiny fingers were cold like ice, but the warmth in that fragile touch made Daniel's heart break. He whispered to himself, This is not my fight, and yet, how can I walk away?" The woman's eyes filled with tears as she saw him touch the child's hand for the first time. A faint smile appeared on her frozen lips. She whispered, almost to herself, "Maybe fate brought you here, human." But outside, in the storm, dark shadows moved, figures walking slowly through the snow, watching the tent, waiting. Daniel did not notice them yet, but the widow knew, and her heart beat with both hope and fear. The storm outside grew louder. Snow struck the fragile tent like fists of ice. Inside, the small fire flickered, its light dancing on pale blue faces. Daniel sat silently, his hands shaking as he held the little child close. The alien woman watched him, her eyes filled with something between sorrow and relief. Her lips parted slowly. "You should know my story, human," she whispered, "before you decide. Before you promise anything." Daniel nodded carefully. He did not trust her yet. But he could not deny the pain in her voice. The children leaned against him, weak but still awake, and so he listened. The woman looked down at her hands, covered in frost. Her words came soft, like snowflakes carried by the wind. "I was not always alone," she said. "I had a family. I had love. I was not meant to be a widow." Her eyes shone with distant memories. She closed them for a moment, as if she could see her past. And then she spoke again. "My husband was a warrior. He was brave, strong, and proud of our people. He believed in honor, and he fought in the war between your kind and mine." Daniel's heart sank. He knew of the wars, stories whispered in human colonies, battles fought on distant worlds. Blood spilled between species who never understood one another. The widow's voice grew heavier. "He went to fight. He never returned. I waited day after day. Until one night, a soldier came to my door, and with cold eyes, he told me, 'Your mate has fallen.'" Her body shook, but not from the cold. It was from the weight of memory. The children pressed against her side, sensing her pain. Daniel felt a knot tighten in his chest. She continued, "My people pitied me at first, but soon they turned away. They said I was cursed because my heart was weak, because I once looked at a human with kindness." Daniel's eyes widened. "You loved a human?" He whispered, her head tilted, her hair falling across her frozen cheek. "Yes," she admitted softly. "Long before I had my husband, I met a traveler, a human." He spoke gently. He smiled kindly. "He was not like the rest, but our worlds were enemies, and so we could not be together. I chose my people. I chose safety, but deep inside, I always remembered him." Her words cut deep into Daniel's mind. Here was a woman, an alien, who carried a secret love for a human in her heart. And now, abandoned, widowed, left to die in the cold, she turned once again to a human. A stranger for help. Her voice broke. "My people called me a traitor. They said my blood carried human weakness. They refused to help my children. They cast us out into the snow. They wanted me to suffer. They wanted us to vanish quietly in the storm." The tent walls shook. Snow forced its way inside through the cracks. The fire hissed as the wind tried to kill it. Daniel pulled the children closer, and his chest burned with anger. How could anyone abandon them like this? The woman looked at him, her eyes shimmering, with tears that froze before they could fall. "Do you see now, human? I have no people, no family, only these children, and they deserve more than the cold. They deserve to live, even if I cannot." Her voice lowered, her breath shallow. "I am already fading. The storm has taken my strength, but you are strong. You can carry them. You can give them a future." Daniel clenched his fists. Every part of him wanted to resist. He was only one man, stranded, lost. But her words pierced through his doubt. This was not just a request. This was her dying wish. The children stirred in his arms. One whispered a soft sound. Not a word, but a plea. Their tiny eyes, glowing faintly in the firelight, looked at him with the same silent question, "Will you leave us too?" Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to answer, but fear still held him in chains. The woman leaned forward, her hand weak as she touched his arm, her skin cold as ice. Yet her touch carried the weight of destiny. "Human," she said softly. "I am not asking you to save me. I am asking you to save them." Her words echoed inside him, like a bell ringing in the emptiness of the storm. For the first time, Daniel saw not just alien children, but children, innocent, fragile, pure, children who had already lost too much. He opened his mouth. But before he could speak, a sudden noise outside made him freeze. Footsteps in the snow, slow, heavy, deliberate. The widow's face paled, her eyes sharp with fear. "They have found us," she whispered. "Hunters." "My own people." The children clung tighter. Daniel's heart pounded like thunder. He looked toward the tent opening. Shadows moved in the storm, dark figures circling, waiting. And the fire inside the tent flickered lower. The widow's story was not just sorrow, it was also warning. She had been cast out, and now, those who cast her out had come to finish what they started. The storm howled louder. Snow pressed against the fragile tent like a monster trying to crush it. Daniel sat frozen in place, his heart beating wildly. The widow's words still echoed in his ears. But now, the sound of footsteps outside filled the air. Dark shadows moved in the snow. He could hear them, slow and heavy. Circling the tent, the widow pulled her children closer. Her eyes glowed faintly with fear. "They will not stop," she whispered. "They came to take my children away, and if they cannot, they will end us here." Daniel's hands tightened around the little boy sitting against his chest. The child was weak, shivering, but his tiny hand clutched Daniel's jacket. Daniel felt a small heartbeat, fragile like a bird's, and he knew if he failed, the children would be lost. But still, doubt crashed inside his mind. He was only one man, one lost human in an alien land. He had no weapons strong enough, no ship, no allies, no plan. How could he protect them? How could he fight a tribe that even their own mother feared? He thought of his own people. Would they even accept alien children? Would they call them monsters? Would they cast him out too? The thought clotted him like cold steel. If he took them, he might destroy his own future. The widow's voice broke through his storm of thought. "You are afraid," she said softly. "I see it in your eyes." Her words were not cruel, only honest. "You wonder if your people will hate them, if they will call you a traitor, as mine called me." Daniel's jaw tightened. Yes, she was right. The fear was not just of the hunters outside, it was of the world beyond, the world where he might not belong anymore if he chose this path. There would be no turning back. The tent shook, snow breaking through the seams. The fire flickered low. Outside, voices murmured, deep and sharp. The hunters were speaking in their tongue. Daniel could not understand the words, but the tone carried hate. They had come to finish what they started. The children whimpered. One buried his face in Daniel's chest. The other hid behind his mother's arm. Their small bodies trembled with fear. Daniel felt a burning ache in his chest. He had seen fear before, in battles and in strangers, but never this pure, this innocent. The widow reached forward and touched his shoulder. Her hand was weak but steady. "You doubt yourself," she whispered. "But hear me, human. Your heart is stronger than you believe." Daniel looked at her, her face pale, her lips cracked, her body weak, yet her eyes still carried fire, a fire of a mother who would not let her children die. Even if she had already accepted her own fate. He swallowed hard. "What if I fail them?" He whispered. "What if I cannot protect them? What if my people reject them? Reject me?" Her gaze softened. "Then at least you tried. At least you gave them more than the cold. At least you gave them hope." Her words were simple, but they struck deep. Because Daniel knew sometimes hope was the only thing that kept people alive. Still, doubt held on. He thought of the long road ahead. He thought of hunger, of danger. He thought of the storm, the hunters, the unknown. He thought of carrying two fragile lives when he barely carried his own. The widow leaned closer. Her voice was weak, almost fading. Human, you must understand. I do not need you to be perfect. I only need you to care, because even care is more than what this world has given them. Her words silenced the storm inside him. For a moment, only the crackle of the fire remained, and the soft sound of the children breathing. Daniel looked down at them, their faces tired, their eyes wide with silent questions. They did not know of politics, of war, of hate. They only knew hunger, cold, and loss. And in that moment, Daniel felt the truth. This was not about nations, not about humans or aliens. It was about children, children who deserved life. But as the thought formed in his heart, the tent flap shook violently. Snow burst inside. A shadow loomed at the entrance, tall and dark. A voice growled in the alien tongue. The widow gasped, pulling her children close. They are here, she whispered. Daniel's breath caught. Fear battled against his resolve. Doubt screamed louder than the storm. Could he really stand against them? Was he about to throw his life away? Or was this the moment he was meant to decide? Not with his mind, but with his heart. The children looked up at him, their glowing eyes full of trust. And for the first time since his crash, Daniel stopped asking if he could, and began asking how he must. The shadow at the tent's entrance did not step inside. It stood there, silent, watching. The storm howled behind it, carrying flakes of snow into the dim firelight. Daniel's hand moved slowly to the side of his belt where his broken weapon rested. It was weak, nearly useless, but in that moment it felt like the only shield he had. The widow's voice trembled. They will wait. They want me to break. They want to see fear before they strike. Her words were heavy, filled with old wounds. Daniel's chest tightened. He knew the hunters outside were not in a hurry. They had the strength of numbers. They believed the storm would finish what they started. The children pressed closer against him. One whispered a soft sound that Daniel could not understand. But he felt the meaning in the child's trembling hand gripping his sleeve. It was a plea not to leave, a silent call for protection. Daniel swallowed hard. He looked at them, to small lives clinging to him. He had once believed himself broken, lost, stranded. But now they looked at him as if he was more than just a man, as if he was hope itself. The widow's eyes softened. She saw the way her children clung to him. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Though her body was weak, they trust you already, she whispered. Children see what adults cannot. They feel hearts, not words. Daniel hesitated. But when he shifted slightly, one of the children reached up with small fingers and touched his face. The touch was light, almost weightless, yet it melted something inside him. The cold that had lived in his heart since the crash began to fade. He let out a slow breath. Why me? He whispered, almost to himself, I'm no hero. I'm just a man who crashed on the wrong world. The widow shook her head weakly. Her voice was gentle but steady. No, human heroes are not chosen by themselves. They are chosen by the ones who need them. The words struck deep. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Because as the child rested its head against his chest, Daniel felt something he had not felt in a long time. A bond, fragile but real. A sense that maybe, just maybe he was no longer alone. The storm outside roared, but inside, a strange warmth grew. The children, though weak, began to whisper softly to one another. Their glowing eyes looked between their mother and the human. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, they seemed to believe they might survive. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ration pack. It was the last of his food. He broke it into pieces and handed it carefully to the children. They hesitated at first, then took it with trembling hands. The taste was strange to them, but hunger was stronger than doubt. They ate quickly, their eyes brightening. And when they finished, one of them leaned against him again, their breathing calmer now. The widow watched silently, her lips trembled, not from the cold this time, but from a flood of emotion. "Do you see? Human." She whispered, "They are already yours in their hearts." Daniel could not answer. His throat was too tight, but deep inside, he knew she was right. Something had changed in that moment. A thread had been tied between them, a bond that even the storm could not break. Outside, the shadows moved again. A low growl of alien words cut through the wind. The widow's face hardened. "They grow impatient," she warned. "They will strike soon." Daniel looked at the children, then at the widow. For the first time, his doubt began to fade. He no longer asked if he could do this. He only thought of what he must do. He tightened his grip around the small hands, resting in his own, and whispered softly, "I won't let them take you." The words were quiet, but to the children, they were everything. Their small, glowing eyes widened, and for the first time, one of them spoke in broken human words, "Father." Daniel froze. The word echoed inside him, a single word but heavy as a world. It was not just a sound, it was trust, it was hope, it was belonging. The widow gasped softly. Her eyes filled with tears. Her trembling lips whispered, "Fate. It is fate." Daniel's heart pounded. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. He did not know if he could truly save them. But in that moment, he knew this bond was real, and bonds, once made, were worth fighting for. The fire crackled weakly. The tent groaned under the weight of the storm. Outside, hunters drew closer, their shadows dark against the snow. The widow leaned back, exhausted. Her voice faint but firm. "They will come soon, but you are not alone anymore. Human, and neither are my children." Daniel closed his eyes. His doubt still whispered inside him. But over it rose the sound of a child's voice, calling him Father, and with it came a strength he had never known. The bond had begun, and there was no turning back. The storm raged louder, but now its voice was joined by another. Heavy footsteps pressed into the snow outside, circling the fragile tent like wolves. Low voices echoed in the alien tongue. Sharp and cold like blades, the hunters had grown impatient. They were ready to strike. Daniel's body stiffened. Every sound made his chest tighten. He looked at the widow. She was pale, her strength fading. But her eyes still burned with warning. "They will not ask. They will not speak. They will take," she whispered. "And if you resist, they will kill you first." The children clung. To Daniel, one buried his face against his chest. The other gripped his arm so tightly, it almost hurt. Their glowing eyes looked up at him with terror. Daniel's heart pounded harder. The word father still echoed in his mind, and he knew if he gave up now, they would never survive. The tent flap moved suddenly. A shadow pushed against it. Snow and icy wind burst inside. Daniel raised his broken weapon. The hunters stepped in, tall and fierce, their skin darker than the widow's, their eyes glowing red in the firelight. Their armor was thick, rough, carved with marks of war, and in their hands they carried long blades of ice crystal, deadly and sharp. The lead hunter's voice rumbled like thunder. He looked at the widow with disgust. "You shame our blood," he growled. "You chose weakness. You chose love for a human once. Now see where it has brought you." Crawling in the snow with half-starved children, the widow held her children close. Her voice shook, but she forced strength into it. "You cast us out. You left us to die. And still you come now to take what little I have left." The hunter sneered. "Those children are not yours to give. They carry our blood. And they will not be raised by a human." His glowing eyes shifted to Daniel. "Full of hate and disgust, this one does not belong. He will die here in the snow." Daniel gritted his teeth. Fear roared inside him. He knew he was weaker. He knew he was outnumbered. But something inside him refused to step back. He pulled the children behind him, and his voice came low, but steady. "If you want them, you'll have to go through me." The tent fell silent for a moment. Only the storm outside dared to speak. The lead hunter laughed, a deep, cruel sound. "You, a single human. You think you can protect them from us?" Daniel's heart pounded, but he did not move. He stood tall, and for the first time, he did not feel alone. The children clung to his legs. Their tiny hands gave him strength. The widow's eyes locked on him. A silent plea and trust passed between them. The hunters stepped closer, their blades glinting in the firelight. The widow suddenly rose, weak but defiant. Her body blocked them, her voice sharp as ice. "Then take me instead. If you must spill blood tonight, let it be mine." Daniel's eyes widened. "No," he shouted, but she stood firm, her trembling form between the hunters and her children. The lead hunter smirked. "Gladly," he hissed. He raised his blade. The firelight flashed across its deadly edge. The children cried out, "Mother!" Their small voices cracked. Daniel's body moved before his mind could think. He rushed forward, grabbing a broken piece of metal from the ground. The hunter's blade came down. Daniel blocked it with the shard. The sound rang through the tent like thunder. The force knocked him to his knees. The blade cut deep into the metal, but Daniel did not let go. He pushed back with all his strength. The children screamed. The widow gasped. The hunter growled in. Surprise, this human was not running. He was fighting. The storm howled louder. The fire crackled, the tent walls shook, and in the chaos, Daniel's voice rose. "You will not take them, not while I breathe." The hunter snarled. Their red eyes burned with fury. The leader pushed harder. His strength was crushing. Daniel's arms shook. Pain surged through his body, but still he held on. The widow fell to her knees, her hands clutching her children. Her tears froze as they fell. "Please, don't take them," she whispered. Her voice broke into the storm, and in her eyes burned a desperate fire. Daniel's strength began to falter. The hunter's blade pressed closer, but then one of the children cried out, "Father, don't give up." The words were small, weak, but they struck Daniel like lightning. His arms surged with new strength, not from muscle, but from something deeper. The bond that had begun now burned in his heart. With a roar, he pushed back, the shard of metal cut into the hunter's blade. Sparks flew as the weapon cracked. The hunter stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock. The other hunters growled, but for the first time, they saw not weakness. They saw defiance. Daniel stood tall, his body shaking, his breath heavy, but his voice was steady. "You will not have them." The storm outside screamed louder. The fire burned brighter. And for a moment, the hunters hesitated. The widow's heart raced. Her children clung tighter, and Daniel stood like a wall between them and death. The fight was not over, but a line had been drawn. The hunters knew now this human would not break. And for the first time, fear flickered in their eyes. The tent shook under the storm. Snow poured through the cracks. The fire hissed and burned low. Daniel stood with the broken shard of metal in his hand, his breath heavy, his arms shaking from the clash. The lead hunter growled, his cracked blade dripped with ice and sparks. He stepped back, glaring at the human with burning red eyes. "You dare stand against us? You are only flesh. You are only one." Daniel's heart thundered in his chest. He knew the truth. He was only one. But when he turned his head and saw the children clutching their mother, when he heard the faint word "father" echo again, he also knew one was enough. If he refused to fall, they would not take them. The other hunters stepped forward, their armor scraping, their blades sharp. The widow gasped. Her pale body trembled as she rose slowly to her feet, her voice weak, but firm. "Stop," she said. "Do not take them. Take me instead." Daniel spun toward her, his eyes wide. "No." He shouted, but she did not look at him. Her gaze stayed fixed on the hunters. "If you want blood, take mine. If you want punishment, let it fall on me. Only spare my children. Let them live. Let them walk away with him," the children cried. "Out, mother." "No." Their tiny voices cracked like glass. They clung tighter to her legs, but she gently touched their heads. Her frozen lips pressed to their hair. "My little stars," she whispered, "do not fear. You will not be alone. The human will protect you." Daniel's chest burned. He felt his throat tighten. The words cut into him like a knife. She was ready to die, ready to give her life so that he could carry her children. The lead hunter sneered. "How noble, how foolish, but even your death will not erase the shame of your blood. And your children half-starved, weak, they will not survive without us." Daniel stepped forward, his voice sharp as the storm. "They don't need you, they need her, and if they lose her, they need me," the hunter growled. "And who are you to claim them? Human?" Daniel raised the shard, his eyes fierce. "I am the one who will not leave them. I am the one who will fight for them. Even if it kills me," the widow gasped softly. Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she saw more than a stranger. She saw the man her children already believed him to be. The hunters roared in anger. They rushed forward. Blades raised, voices harsh. Daniel braced himself, but before they reached him, the widow stepped in front, her arms spread wide, her body weak, but her will like fire. "Enough," she cried, her voice cracked through the storm. "Take me, but leave them." The hunters froze for a moment. Even Daniel stood still. The storm seemed to hush. The widow's figure stood tall despite her weakness. Her hair whipped in the wind, her glowing eyes burning with love and sorrow. She was a mother ready to give everything, her life for her children. Daniel's heart shattered. "No," he whispered. He could not let her do this. He could not stand by while she gave herself away. Not after all she had suffered. Not after all she had lost. The lead hunter smirked. "So be it," he growled. He raised his blade high. The children screamed. Daniel's body moved before his mind could think. He threw himself between them. The shard of metal clashed against the glowing blade. Sparks flew. Pain ripped through his arms, but he did not fall. His voice roared louder than the storm. "You will not touch her. You will not touch them." The hunters snarled. They pushed. But Daniel pushed harder. Every muscle burned. Every breath cut his chest. But inside him burned something stronger. A fire that no storm could kill. The widow stared at him, her lips trembling. Tears froze on her cheeks. You would die for us," she whispered. Daniel's eyes locked on hers. "I would, but I won't, because I will live for them." "For you," the hunters growled louder. Their strength pressed harder. Daniel's knees buckled. The shard cracked. The children sobbed. The widow cried out. It seemed the storm itself leaned in, waiting for the end. And then a sound split the night. Not from Daniel, not from the hunters, but from the widow. A scream, sharp and wild. Her glowing eyes blazed brighter than ever before. She stepped forward, grabbing a fallen crystal shard from the floor, and with the last of her strength, she drove it into the ice at her feet. The ground shook. The storm howled louder. Snow burst. Upward like fire, the hunters stumbled back. The tent ripped open. The widow collapsed to her knees, her chest heaving, her body nearly broken. But her action had given Daniel one chance. The hunters fell back, their red eyes wide with fury. The storm raged around them. The widow gasped for breath, her voice weak. Take them, human. Take them and run. Daniel's heart burned. He wanted to lift her too, but he saw the truth in her eyes. She had nothing left. Her sacrifice was already made. The children clung to him. Tears streaked their frozen cheeks. Mother, no. Their voices broke. The widow pulled them close for one last embrace. Her lips pressed to their foreheads. Her tears fell. Live, she whispered. Live, my little stars. And then she pushed them into Daniel's arms, her final strength. Spent, her body sinking toward the snow, Daniel held the children tight, his voice shaking. No, I won't leave you. But the widow smiled faintly, her glowing eyes soft. You already gave me more than I dreamed. You came, human, and you cared. The hunters roared outside, their blades rising again. The storm screamed, and in that moment, Daniel knew her sacrifice would only mean something if he survived, if he carried the children into tomorrow. He lifted them into his arms, his heart breaking. But his will like fire, and he swore, I will not let them be alone, not while I live. The widow closed her eyes, her breath shallow. A faint smile touched her lips, and with the storm swirling around her, she whispered her last word, promise. The storm screamed through the torn tent. Snow poured inside, covering the ground in white. The hunters circled like shadows, their red eyes glowing, but for one moment, time slowed. Because all Daniel could see was her. The widow lay on the frozen floor, her body trembling, her breath shallow. Her eyes still glowing faintly looked not at the hunters, but at her children. At the little faces pressed against Daniel's chest, tears froze on their cheeks. Their small hands reached toward her desperate mother. Don't go, they cried. Daniel's heart broke. He wanted to lift her. He wanted to carry her with them. But even without words, he knew the truth. Her body had given all it could. The storm had taken its price, and yet her eyes carried no fear, only love. Her voice was soft, weak, but every word cut deep, human. Daniel. Promise me. Daniel knelt beside her, the children clinging to him. His throat tight, his chest burning. Anything, he whispered, his voice shaking. Anything you ask. Her lips trembled into a faint smile. Do not let them be alone. Do not let them be forgotten. Give them what I could not. A home, a family. Warmth. Daniel's eyes blurred with tears. His hands gripped hers, cold and fragile. I promise, he said, his voice breaking. I promise they will never be alone. They will be my children now. They will have my name, my heart, my life. The widow's chest rose slowly. Her smile grew faint but peaceful. Her glowing eyes softened as she looked at the children. My little stars, she whispered, shine brighter than I ever could. Shine in a sky where no storm can reach you. The children cried louder. They tried to pull from Daniel's arms. They wanted to run to her, but she shook her head gently. No. Stay with him. He will keep you safe. He is your father now. Daniel's breath caught. The word struck him like lightning again. Father, a title he had never carried. A title he had never thought he deserved, but now given by her, trusted. By them, it was the most sacred word in the universe. The hunters outside snarled. Their leader stepped forward. Enough of this. She is finished. Now give us the children. Daniel's head snapped toward them, his eyes burning with fire. His voice rose, sharp as steel. No, you will never touch them. Not while I live, the hunters growled. But for the first time, there was hesitation in their steps. Because they saw the way he stood, not as a stranger, not as prey, but as a father protecting his children, and that strength was something they could not crush. The widow's breath grew slower, her voice weaker, but her last words reached Daniel's soul. You are not alone anymore, and neither are they. Thank you. Human. Her hand slipped from his. Her eyes closed. The glow faded softly, like a star disappearing into the night. The children wailed, Mother. Their cries pierced the storm. Daniel held them close, tears falling freely down his face. He wanted to break, but he could not, because he had promised. The hunters moved again, but Daniel rose to his feet, the children in his arms, his body trembling, his strength fading, yet his eyes blazed with unshakable resolve. He stood before them like a wall, and his voice thundered through the storm. You will not take them. They are mine now, and I will fight until the end. The lead hunter sneered, but deep in his eyes there was unease. The human did not stand alone anymore. He carried something stronger than weapons. He carried purpose. He carried love. The storm howled. The snow grew thicker. The hunters stepped back. They knew the battle was not theirs to win tonight. They turned slowly, disappearing into the blizzard, their red eyes fading like dying embers. Silence fell. Only the storm remained. Daniel stood, his breath heavy, the children clinging to him, their tears soaking his jacket. Behind him lay the still body of the widow, her sacrifice carved forever into his heart. He looked down at the children. Their glowing eyes met his, full of grief, full of fear, but also something else. Trust, faith. Daniel knelt in the snow. He pressed his forehead gently to theirs, his voice soft, trembling, but sure. You are not alone anymore. I am your father now. I will carry you. I will protect you. I will love you, the children cried softly, but their hands tightened around him, and for the first time they whispered together, Father. The storm slowly began to fade. The night stretched wide and empty. But inside that broken tent, a new family was born. Not by blood, but by promise. Not by race, but by love. Daniel stood again, the children in his arms. The world outside was harsh, the future uncertain, but he carried them with strength. And in his heart echoed the widow's last words, her heartbreaking wish, promise me. And he had, and he would keep it, for as long as he lived, for as long as they breathed. They would never be alone.